Bonisile with Premier League Matchweek 16 review results, and yeah, lots to chat about. And I'm actually going to be watching the Manchester United match as soon as I'm done recording the podcast. I'll probably be keeping an eye as I watch now, but yeah. So Premier League Matchweek 16, very good results for for the champion type crew, like the teams that are chasing title ambitions, if you want to call it that. A win for Man City, a win for Arsenal, a win for Aston Villa, win for Liverpool. I think people are too eager to get them out of this race. It's 16 games in. As you can see, people can drop points anywhere. Liverpool being about 10 points behind Arsenal. Um, it's not too far with 22 games remaining. But we're gonna go in some kind of order. I'll try to talk about the rest of the league and then kind of hone into the title chasing pack, kind of like top tier starting teams to the season so far. And with that said, I'm going to start with the game between Brentford and Leeds. It was a tight game. Brentford games seem to be a lot more fun than I remember them to be under Thomas Frank. They are a very good team structure wise. They utilize set pieces, but there's more to them than just set pieces. And they had quite a lot of chances late in games. And another thing that's interesting about Brentford, there seems to be a penalty decision given to them almost every game. And it's kind of a myth buster in a way, in that a lot of times most football fans, when talking about penalties given, they think the big teams get the penalties calls in their favor. But Brentford, for one reason or another, man, there's been penalties involved. And this is not even to take a shot at Thiago, their number one striker, who I think is the second leading goal scorer behind Haaland on 10 or 11 goals. I think he was definitely the second player to hit double digits in the Premier League this season. So it's crazy. Lots of late goals in Brentford games and lots of penalties. They were given a penalty in this game, but it was ruled out because the player had been offside leading up to the foul. They get a late goal again, but a lot of their goals tend to come after the 80th, 75, 80th minute. They get a goal in this game in the 70th minute through Jordan Henderson to take a 1-0 lead. And, Henderson reminded people that at the ripe old age of 35, he can still play. And he has been actually a really good buy for them, almost like Granit Xhaka has been for Sunderland. But I'll give Xhaka almost a close shout right now for even like one of the best players of the Premier League season so far. But Jordan Henderson is having himself a season quietly at Brentford and definitely earning himself a flight to the United States for the World Cup next year. But Leeds had something to say in this game, and 10 minutes or so later, in the 82nd minute, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who else, gets the goal for Leeds to make it 1-1, and there were no more goals after that. There was some late action drama. Ouattara could have gotten himself a goal. Leeds had a few good shouts. Leeds have been playing really well, and they've won one, drawn two in their last three games. So that's 5 points from 9. After all the talk about Daniel Farke getting, the sack possibly, they've shown a good face over the last three game weeks, and they're a fun team, Leeds, to watch, and I think they're going to give a lot of teams problems when they go to Allen Road, their home ground. But they've traveled decently as well. They traveled in this game, for example, they traveled down to London to play against Brentford. And it was a properly contested game between two teams that are expected to be near the relegation battle. But I think both of these teams will like their chances the way they're playing right now. They will like their chances against the teams that are behind them, unless teams like Wolves start finding life immediately under Rob Edwards, and some of the other teams below start showing a degree of consistency to scare them. I think Brentford and Leeds will like their chances to not be one of the three worst teams this season. The next game I'll talk about is Sunderland 1, Newcastle zip. This one was a feisty game, and it's typical of the the Northeast derby, Newcastle area derby, Tyneside derby, whatever you want to call that area. And this game delivered in terms of physical competitiveness, edge, nastiness, couple of brawls here and there. But I want to say Sunderland were good. They were competitive. They were playing at home. It was a really intense game, but they were lucky, Sunderland, and I think the luck fell on their side in this game. And I say that not because I don't think they were good 11v11. I do think Brian Brobby not getting sent off meant that Sunderland were able to keep 11 players on the field. And fair play to the referees for not, letting the whistle decide the game. So that's two major pieces of luck. I think one of those yellows, the one yellow that was given was maybe leaning towards orange. And he has another foul that on its own is a yellow card. But he doesn't get given the yellow card and stays on the pitch. He doesn't score a goal or anything like that. But I think the fact that Sunderland were able to keep 11 players on the pitch and compete, because that's what they do at home. They give anybody a run for their money. Unfortunately, they're going to lose some players to AFCON, but they played really hard. And another stroke of luck was Voltamata scoring an own goal, the best one you will see in terms of, that own goal was a blinder. And Sunderland did enough to win the game because they were solid enough to keep a clean sheet, and they threatened Newcastle's goal, but Newcastle played well. I think it's hard for me to call who would have deserved to win this game, but maybe because the home team was Sunderland and they were, really eager to show what's what, because this derby hasn't been played at the top level of English football, I think a decade at least, since the last time this game was played. Next game, Aston Villa takes a 3-goal win again away to West Ham. This game was weird in the beginning. Aston Villa had horrific start to the game with West Ham basically robbing the ball through Fernandes off of Konsa. Scores from a really difficult angle, tight angle from the left side of the box, and he roofs it beautifully. And West Ham will find themselves 1-0 up within 30 seconds of starting the game. And then the game settled into an expected kind of end-to-end type of game. Aston Villa, that's what they do. They play basketball. This Aston Villa team kind of reminds me of early Jurgen Klopp Liverpool, like that 2016 to 2018 Liverpool era. The first version of Liverpool conceded too many goals, straight after Brendan Rodgers. But then a season of Klopp at Liverpool, the one that was beating teams all the time in basketball matches, that's what Villa are doing right now. And in Morgan Rodgers, they have themselves a talisman at age 23, a talisman who knows how to swing the game in the favor of his team. And Unai Emery and him are right now the two most important men at that club. Because Unai, you have to give credit to him for the masterful coaching job that he's doing in Aston Villa. But without Morgan Rogers, I think it looks different. This kid does the hard yards for this team defensively. He knits play, he play makes, he finishes plays. He's everywhere. He's just ridiculously gifted. And with the frame that he has, that means he can also mix it up, with the best of them. It's kind of hard to know what because he's been playing off the left in this Villa team. But he comes in, he plays like a number 10, he plays like a striker. He's given a free role. And I think, it's well deserved for the most part that Villa have won 10 out of their last 11 games, 9 straight wins. 9 straight wins. And in those wins, two of them came against Manchester City and Arsenal, both of them at Villa Park. But to win 9 straight in the Premier League, that's championship form. People talk about relegation form. This is championship form. Now, I don't think Aston Villa will win the Premier League, but people are going to have to start taking them seriously as a title contender with what they're doing. They've had definitely good fortune in terms of injuries and all of that. But my God, you can't be lucky this much. This is something good happening at Aston Villa. And after the 5 games or so to start the season without a win, they've just taken off like a rocket. And the Premier League needs to watch out because they do have some nice, favorable games in the next little bit. I mean, the next 3 or so games are going to be a little bit difficult. It's Manchester United in there. It's Arsenal. It's Chelsea. I think it's United, Chelsea, then Arsenal. But after that, they start to have again another nice run of games. Problem is they're going to have to start traveling to some of the more difficult grounds. But Aston Villa are doing quite well, and they equalize within 8 minutes of going behind here with Dino Mavropanos. And then West Ham takes a lead again through Jared Bowen, but West Ham are just not able to keep their goal from being scored again. They just can't keep goals out, and that they don't have the most prolific front line. So when you don't keep goals out and you don't have a prolific front line, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in trouble. And so they're going to have to tighten up a little bit more. They're gambling a little bit, and going a little loose and going for games, it can happen when you start getting some results, which is what happened after Nuno came in. But I think West Ham are going to probably need to take a more humble approach again, be solid, be hard to beat, play a 3-4, 3-4-2-1, 3-5-2, 3-4-3, whatever Nuno used to do at Wolves. I think he needs to go back to that with this West Ham team and play 3 center backs, go with wing backs, but I think West Ham will feel they could have gotten something out of this game because there were some chances that they really missed that were bad. And Bowen almost makes it 3-2 just before Villa makes it 3-2. Finishes beautifully, but he's judged to have been offside in the build-up and rightfully had been offside. The next game is Liverpool 2, Brighton 0. This game, I'm not going to talk too much about game events, but mostly just talk about Hugo Ekitike. This kid, I was just talking about Morgan Rogers a little while ago, like a few in the Villa game. Hugo Ekitike is a problem. Still raw in his talent. He still needs a bit of polish. He kind of reminds me of a young Thierry Henry. And again, people are going to be like, what are you doing? You can't spit that man's name and put it in the mix with this kid and whatnot. Again, a young Thierry Henry is not the guy I'm talking about that became, a king of Highbury, the legend of Arsenal. But Thierry Henry in World Cup 1998, Thierry Henry, when he still had some locks, playing with David Trezeguet. Thierry Henry at Juventus, Thierry Henry who arrived at Arsenal before he became the Thierry Henry that then everybody fell in love with at Arsenal. Hugo Ekitike for me kind of moves a little bit like Thierry, and he's got a big frame too, like Thierry. He can play on the wing, he can play on the inside. He has the beating of his man more often than not for a center forward. I think Slaughter needs to find a way to keep this kid in the game, whatever it takes. Even if this kid plays on the left and Gakpo and other people move around, I do not care. He needs to keep this kid in the game. He could have scored more than the two he did score. He tries to set up Salah in one time. He's unselfish. He's a team player, but he's definitely, for me, looking like a player ready to explode, which is another reason why many people are baffled about Liverpool going for Alexander Isak. Now, Isak is top level talent, and I think any club that has a chance to get him should try and get him. But I think Liverpool probably sacrificed short-term gains by buying Ekitike and then Isak. They sacrificed short-term gains in terms of team balance, and it's been showing in the way that they've been trying to rectify the issues internally. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Liverpool go big for a central midfielder and a couple of defenders, if not a couple of midfielders and a couple of defenders in January. I wouldn't be surprised, because should Liverpool find a midfielder to sit in the six that's better than Wataru Endo, and then find another person who can back up Van Dijk and Konate, this team is loaded up front. They are loaded, and they're going to figure this out. And I've been saying this even when things were not going well. I'm not too worried for them because of the riches of talent that they have. But this kid Ekitike, bro, he's something else. And the other mention that I'll give to this game was, the makeup between Slot and Salah for now. It seems like they've made up. And Salah came on, goal contribution, which it puts him in the record in the Premier League for the most goal contributions by any one player for a single club, which beats Wayne Rooney's record that he had in Manchester United for 276 goal contributions, I think. And I think Salah is now at 277 goal contributions. What happens after AFCON? My suspicion is that Salah will finish the season with Liverpool. However, it's going to be hard to call, because the January window will open while Salah is away. There may be offers from Saudi. Liverpool could use the money because they spent a lot of money in the summer. And Salah could probably use a new start somewhere. I don't know if a deal of that size can be done quickly in January, but let's keep our eyes on that one. I think Mo Salah is a very proud man, rightfully so, for what he has been and who he has been in the game. But it's going to be hard to see that one ending well for both Salah and Liverpool beyond this summer. I think something is going to have to give there. I think extending him, recently was maybe, a contract too many in that relationship. But they're doing the best they can, Liverpool, and it looks like they're figuring it out as they go along. So now, this one surprised me. Nottingham Forest 3, Tottenham Hotspur 0. I was surprised by this game. It's another game that surprised me later on that involved my team that I'll talk about later on in this podcast. But Forest played well. Like watching the game, Forest were worthy winners, worthy 3-0 winners. So like, it doesn't surprising as you watch the game. It was surprising from a point of view of predicting what would happen. I was surprised at how flat Tottenham seemed to be for this game. And Callum Hudson-Odoi bagged himself a couple goals. and he was involved in all three goals. But for me, the main guy in this game was his midfielder teammate, Ibrahim Sangare, who was also involved in all three goals with two assists and a goal for himself, the best goal of the game by a country mile. Thunderous strike, but that was the goal to make it 3-0. Um, but my favorite plays from him was, him stealing the ball from Archie Gray to make the goal for Hudson Odoi, him just basically being a monster in that midfield. And you remember, he's playing with next to Elliot Anderson, who, is a player that, and I have been really, really impressed by this season, and a player that's probably going to be doing big things in the game. But to in the midfield with all of those other players there, for him to have been the standout midfielder and probably the best player in the game for the day, that was worthy of praise. Unfortunately, Forest will lose him for a few weeks as he goes to AFCON to play for the defending champs. Um, so yeah, like this one was a very good game. People are gonna have a go at Thomas Frank. I've already seen a lot of content leaning in that way, but he's doing a decent enough job to have a balanced season. Like, so his results in Europe are starting to look a bit better. He's patching things up, but it is slower than, if I was a Spurs fan, I would be as well unhappy with the inconsistencies. I would be unhappy with the level of apathy I saw in this game. I would be unhappy with conceding so many goals after starting solidly defensively. I think he's trying to do a little bit more, and then you run the risk of conceding goals. But then when he's being too solid, it's a bit more stale and boring, and looks like they're lacking ideas. So Tottenham is trying to find their balance, I think, between a solid defense with a good enough attack versus being too solid but nothing going the other way, or trying to do too much going forward and then leaving yourselves open in the back. Yeah, the journey of trying to balance a football team is one that's hard to watch as you watch it unfold live. I feel for the coach, because I think he's rightfully the person who takes all the questions when things aren't going well. But I think Tottenham are having a better season than what they had last year, and to build from that, it takes a little bit of time, and they have enough talent there, but young talent. So, and young talent does this, like a kid like Archie Gray, for example. They haven't had him for most of the season. He's still like 19 or something, right? He's young. He will come good. Xavi Simons, he will come good. I think Tottenham are gonna be up and down till maybe February or so. And hopefully by then they will have a run of games where they start showing a different face. But it takes time to hire a manager in the summer with a team that won the Europa League. There's a bit of expectation, but like, they finished 17th. They were the worst team to return to the Premier League this year. And now, they're a couple of points away from Champions League positions. Excuse me. A couple of points away from Champions League positions. They're about to beat their total points tally in the Premier League last year. And they're in the better European tournament. Last year, they were crap, and they were playing in a Europa League that didn't even have Champions League teams drop in the spring. So they won a very weakened Europa League, and kudos, they won it. But I think sometimes when people are looking at Thomas Frank's work at Tottenham, they looking at it devoid of all of that. But actually, you have to look at all of that when you are trying to make sense of what he's doing and how he's doing. So, I mean, I understand it. I have Arsenal fans who are friends of mine. We argue about this stuff all the time. But I tend to try to take a global view to try to make sense of the micro. And yes, you can go hard on a coach or a player for a 90-minute that was bad, and this one was bad. This was bad. But to kind of go for his job and go for him in totality, I think that's a little early. So that's my take. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Please let me know in the comments. Burnley 1, Fulham 3. I'm not going to go too much in this game, but just say I love Emil Smith Rowe. Happy to see him playing. Glad Marco Silva has decided to give him game time again. And Josh King, there's room for both them players in this team, but Josh King is also just still a teenager, and he's played a lot of football so far this season. So for him to be using ESR again, and that kid coming on sharing minutes and all of that, I think that's good. And then the other thing is Harry Wilson and that left foot. Harry Wilson and that left foot. Mm-mm. That boy, that boy, that boy. He scored a great goal in the previous game week, which was basically an Arsene Wenger type goal. He scores one here and makes two. He's got a really good left foot. He's definitely like way better than James Ward-Prowse as an all-around footballer in terms of impacting games in the front. I know Ward-Prowse plays deeper and Wilson plays a little bit further forward, but I think his gift is ball striking. His ball striking is that's kind of like I think what makes me think of Ward-Prowse, and Declan Rice seems to be also kind of arriving in that group now. But Rice has come into that group from having been a good all-round footballer. This kid is developing his all-round game, but his magic, his number one weapon, is how well he hits a football, whether it's for an assist or whether it's for striking it or for a set piece, dead ball specialist, and just like passing the ball into the net for that third goal. That's all I'm going to say. Fulham would deserve it 3-1 winners in this game. Burnley did what they could here and there, huffed and puffed. But Fulham were, for me, the better team. And Harry Wilson and ESR were my story for this game. Kelvin Bassey did his thing here and there, gets himself a goal. He's a funny footballer, Kelvin Bassey. But yeah, this game for me was all ESR and Harry Wilson, them boys. And then Cold Palmer made a 60-minute appearance for Chelsea, which is something that's going to make a lot of Chelsea fans happy in Chelsea's 2-0 win at the Bridge over Everton. Everton were unlucky to lose Dewsbury Hall, who would have been very helpful for them in this game. But Chelsea were deserved winners. And there's not much else to talk about here besides, Chelsea did what they needed to do to stay within touching distance with the top teams. And Everton's long run of good form came to a pause. And we'll see what they do next time out at their home ground against Arsenal. And then a game that was really, really, really well contested was Crystal Palace 0, Manchester City 3. This game was as close or tight a 3-0 win as you can get. This was not a dominant 3-0 win. This was a 3-0 win that I think the main difference in this game for me is the talent in the attacking positions. Like Manchester City, offensive talent or firepower is a lot more efficient in front of goal, because Crystal Palace could have at least been a goal or two up before City even had a goal from Haaland. At the very least, a goal up. Yeremy Pino played with his food a couple of times. Sa missed. Sometimes they didn't even work the goalkeeper. It was bad. Pino hits the bar. Pino hits it over. Sa hits it wide. Mateta, too many poor moments for Palace in the final third in this game. And I think they're going to rule those missed chances, because I think they were not deserving of a 3-0 dropping. And I'm not saying this because I'm an Arsenal fan. I didn't want City to win. I think City deserved to win because they made the big moments count in their favor. and Manchester United just scored 1-0 against Bournemouth. So they made their big moments count. And, Haaland, what can we say about him? I mean, there's not much else you can say about this guy. Phil Foden has found himself as a footballer again. But Palace were in this game. It was not a 3-0 drubbing or domination by Man City. It was a very competitive game until City really ran away with it in the second half, with goals from Haaland, 2 goals from Haaland, one being a penalty after Savinho was fouled by Henderson, having run all the way the pace of the whole entire pitch basically, because Palace were chasing the game at this point, and the penalty is converted in the 89th minute. But this was a good game. This was a really good game of football. Manchester City are playing again at a championship level. They found fluency with Cherki and Foden, Reinders, Bernardo Silva as a 4 behind Haaland. They have some really good footballers, bright footballers who are able to make impact on games, especially in the final third. I'm actually quite impressed with what Pep has done with this new version of Manchester City. He's found himself a left back in O'Reilly, who, a big boy who can do the up and down. He's as big as a center back, but he's been schooled as a number 10 slash midfield, attacking midfielder player. And then he's playing there. So he's like basically the best of both worlds for Pep, who loves control in midfield, who loves a fullback to give him tons going forward. So I think Manchester City have found a formula here, built in between a world-class goalkeeper and a world-class center forward. And then they found a perfect mix of stuff in between. They still have championship level defenders in Guardiola and Ruben Diaz, right? Who have both been able to stay fit for most of this time of this season. And then you have no Rodri still, but like Nico Gonzalez is proving to be a capable enough deputy, and the team is functioning well. Fair play to City. And after having a couple of tight calls against Leeds and Fulham, they've gone the next 2 games, boom, boom, sort their opponents out, win comfortably. And final game I'll talk about is Arsenal 2, Wolves 1. Talk about a game that was not what you were expected. No, this game was incredibly surprising. Not from what Wolves did. Wolves did exactly. Anyone who watched the game against Manchester United and saw Wolves get humiliated in front of their home fans and they get booed, and everybody, wants to walk out on the club and boycott the club and all that, everybody would have known that Wolves are going to show up for this game at that place against this team and be on their Sunday best, right? I know the game was not on a Sunday, but they brought their Sunday best. They were on their best behaviors. They were chasing balls. They were getting back into shape. It's not the same Wolves that played against Manchester United that showed up at the Emirates on Saturday. And they knew too, the world would be watching. It was a late kickoff. I think it was 8 p.m. English time kickoff. So it was everybody, all hands on deck, everybody pulling in the same direction. And Arsenal helped them out too. Arsenal was unrecognizable in this game. They physically did not appear to be at the races. I don't quite understand why that happened, because Teta did rotate. I've been one of the big people complaining about rotation. He has been rotating. He changed 4 players from the midweek. So 4 players who didn't start in midweek started this game. Saka started, Eze started, didn't even play midweek. Again, another anonymous performance from Eze, in my opinion. Martinelli started after having a good performance midweek. This game seems like he lost his shooting boots in the Champions League stadium, because Martinelli couldn't hit a target from 6 yards so many different times, twice with his foot. Right before he was substituted out, he kicks the ball wide, but he also heads the ball wide from a Declan Rice shot, corner. He heads it over and wide that way from like literally near the far post. I don't understand what was going on with Martinelli in this game. He had some moments where he looked good. He had some moments like he cooked the defender, in the moment I'm talking about. He creates that chance for himself, but then his shooting let him down. Martinelli had a game to forget. Eze had a game to forget. And don't get me started on my number one striker right now, Victor Gyökeres, Victor Coquerez, whatever you want to call him. The man is, at the moment, struggling. He is just struggling. And I don't want to go too hard on any player because I still believe in this team. And I think players will have moments like this. But when these moments are happening, we have to talk about them. And Gyökeres, I know there's a lot of excuses being made for him as far as like, his teammates need to find him better and all of this other stuff. But then you have Gabriel Jesus who comes in and plays how many minutes with this team? 10 plus 15, 10 plus 20, 20 midweek, maybe 10, 15 this game against Wolves. And Gabriel Jesus has more chances per game than Gyökeres, who's been playing more minutes per game in the time that they've both been on the field. The game for me was it was an aberration, so I don't want to go too hard on the players. But the fact that Arsenal didn't have a shot on target against Wolves at home for 60 minutes, 0 shots on targets for more than 60 minutes. We start to take our first shots on goal properly, again, from range by Declan Rice. That's the first one. I don't even know if it was going in, but the keeper makes a save. I think that must be one of the 2 shots on target we had in this game. So we scored 2 goals, but we only had 2 shots on target, and none of them were the goal because both the goals were own goals from Wolves players. Martinelli, Gyökeres, I hope that they gonna go into Everton angry, ready to do something, and just basically obliterate opponents over the next month. I really do. Just for this game alone, I think they need to go with a chip on their shoulder. Noni Madueke didn't see the game at all this game. And I don't know if that's a fitness concern or that's just Arteta saying, we got to look after the players. But yeah, the starters really didn't do much. Odegaard comes on off the bench and Trossard, who, besides Saka, I think Trossard was the other attacker that did okay in this game. He had some frustrating moments, but like he actually started to jumpstart Gyökeres' game. He started to find passing passages that Martinelli was not able to find. And United still 1-0, 23 minutes in. But yeah, like I think for me, Manchester United, just my train of thought just gone there. Arsenal were very, very fortunate to get this win, but they were also unfortunate to lose the game at Aston Villa because I think though Villa were maybe slightly deserving of a win, but to lose a game like that, it's hard. So like sometimes it can swing your way, sometimes it can swing the other way. And I think it's happened where luck hasn't been on Arsenal's side. I think Villa did well in that game and they were fine. I'm okay with that they won and Arsenal lost the point with the last kick of the game. However, in that last moment that leads to the goal for Villa, like the ball is loose for quite some time, but it never breaks for Arsenal and it breaks for Villa several times, including the time they score. So, like little things like that in a football match can happen and the ball can break your way, right? So Arsenal win, and they should take the win and run to a couple of days off for the players and some really good practice. And Arteta did talk about that this week they're going to have to rework some habits. He talked about horrible defensive habits that he saw in the lead up to the Wolves goal. I think Arsenal did try to get a second goal. I don't think they set deep immediately after scoring because I remember the Gyökeres chance comes after Arsenal had gone and scored the goal. Martin Odegaard also has a chance that hits the side netting after Arsenal had scored the goal. There were several others. But I think eventually they started to sit deep because maybe they're just like, okay, we're good enough to stop these lot from scoring because we got the best defense in the league. They got the worst offense. But football is a funny old game. And again, it found a way to remind all of us that you can't take anything for granted, especially in the Premier League, but in football in general. You can't take anything for granted, and you can never, ever sit pretty and comfortable with a 1-0 lead. That's just dangerous. You can't do that. And so Arsenal did themselves no favors with the way they approached this game from start to finish. But I will say that eventually they were able to, to do enough to see themselves as winners. So, with that said, like I think, like, all you can say right now is forget about this game, have some goldfish memory, go and focus on getting well and focus on how you're going to win the next 2 to 3 games. One game at a time, but try to win the next 2 to 3 games. You have to now string at least wins in all of your home games. I don't care how strong your opponent is. Aston Villa are coming to town, you have to beat them now because they beat you at their house. Liverpool are coming to town, you have to beat them now because they beat you at their house. Both of those games, you lose to those teams, both of them are closing the gap on you, which is why I'm not counting Liverpool out. Because if we drop points between now and when we play Liverpool, by the time we play to them, and if we don't win and they beat us at our place, then the points difference could be 3 or 4 points between us and Liverpool. It could be. And you don't want that. You don't want to be 3 points away from Liverpool after they've given you such a good head start for you to have a good run on them. So get your stuff together, Arsenal. Sort yourselves out. Sort yourselves out. And then you can go into late January with players back. Hopefully by that time, Gabriel, Mosquera are back, and you've lost maybe, one player because Ben White is out now again. That's the other thing with Arsenal that's annoying this season is that you get a player back or you get two back, you get one out. You get Noni back and then somebody else is going out. Trossard goes out. Gabriel goes out. Mosquera comes in. Mosquera plays a couple of games. Mosquera is out. Saliba then is out, and then you have someone else. Like it's like this in the Arsenal injury room. So like you can't win the league much else, nothing else, to be honest. You can't win with this level of injury record. So you have to now, like, I'm not worried about the coaching. I'm not worried about the playing talent. I am worried about keeping this group now together long enough to sustain a run. That's why Aston Villa have won 10 of their last 11 games. They've won 9 in a row because they have been able to keep players fit. Now, I understand they're not playing in the Champions League. They're playing in another conference or Europa League where they can rest players a little bit. Fair enough. They can rest players and all of that. But we have a squad that's big enough that, like, when we start getting players back, we should be able to rotate, which is why it's so puzzling that Arsenal was so bad, just energy wise. Like, I'm not like I understand about low blocks. People are gonna come to the Emirates and they're gonna give Arsenal their best punch, right? Like, when you're a good team, you get everybody's best punch. Like, that's just the way it works in football. So for me, I think the key thing here is, first of all, expect that you're gonna get their best punch. But number two, don't be outworked, man. Like, you can't be outworked. You can be outplayed, you can be outsmarted or outthought. That's fine because everybody's clever and they can come up with something that surprises you. But for me, the one thing that I do not have time for, that I do not want Arsenal to fall into, and and I watch football broadly. Every team in the Premier League now in 2025 defends. That's the prerequisite. That's why the whole Mo Salah thing has gone the way it has. And I know why Mo feels like he's being used as a scapegoat. But I think part of it as well, if you're looking in from the coach's side, I think the coach is saying, we're not keeping clean sheets, and we have a guy that we're carrying in the team, which I hope is not going to be the case with someone like Eze for Arsenal, because I think Eze he's a more willing defender than Salah, so I'm not going to paint him with that brush. However, I'm starting to worry about Eze and Gyökeres as far as like their ability to stay in games, stay engaged in games, even when they're not scoring. I want to see a little bit more of like playing together with the team from them too. And I think I trust Eze to figure it out quicker than Gyökeres, because Gyökeres is further forward. However, it's a really, really difficult time if you are a team like Arsenal. You're playing against a low block, and you have people who are going to shy away from calling for the ball and making themselves available to help you get the numerical advantages that you can get. Like maybe on the side, to the left, in the middle, in the half spaces, or to the side on the right. And I think Arteta has to figure that one out. Like, is Eze going to be your left winger now that Odegaard is back? Or is he playing inside and you can give Zubimendi and Rice some time to kind of like catch a breath a little bit? Because those two guys, we're going to need them in crunch time. And they've played a lot of football already. Zubimendi has played the most minutes of any Arsenal outfield player. And he looked like he was blowing a little bit in some of the most recent games. So, we have to start looking after players. And if we're not willing to use or trust Christian Norgard to play in midfield in the stead of Declan Rice or Eze, if we're not willing to trust, them two, we're not willing to trust him to replace one of them two, then we have to figure out a way of resting them. That doesn't include Norgard on the pitch, right? So then that means one of them can play with Eze and Odegaard, or with Merino and Eze, or with Merino and Odegaard. Like, you have to find a way to not have Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi on the pitch all the time. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining, and I'm going to close this one here. I'm going for almost an hour. I always tend to do just 30 minutes, but an hour, 50 minutes or so, not bad for a solo pod. Anyway, thank you for joining, and please subscribe, share, like the content, comment on anything that I said, and also just give me some feedback on, anything that you think I could do better, in terms of like covering and whatnot. I'm always here for positive engagement. Thank you for joining this episode of the Foot and Nose podcast. I'm your host, Bonisile. Cheers and happy holidays, my friends.